So who woke up this morning saying, I'm excited to learn about music theory? And everybody turned their webcams off, so no, I can't even see hands anyways. Thumbs up, perfect. All right, good. People woke up this morning, even those that woke up 10 minutes ago. Still excited about it. Before we can do anything in GarageBand, we need to do a little music theory 101, all right? So we're gonna start out, and the reason that we're talking about music theory today is that because we're actually going to be creating our own songs in GarageBand, we need to have a basic understanding of essentially what buttons to push or which chords to use to make a song. So to kick us off, the first thing we want to talk about in relation to GarageBand is the key signature. So when you set up a song, you can dictate the tempo of the song, the time signature of the song, how many measures are in the song. But for songwriting and music composition, the key signature is going to be a big driver of which sounds and what chords you're going to use. So on your, if you've got your GarageBand hand up open, or your handout open that I put in the chat a little bit earlier, the top of page 1 and the bottom of page 1 talk a little bit about this kind of music theory and the songwriting and how it relates to key signature. So when we talk about key signature, we're talking about a group of pitches or a scale that forms the basis of a music composition. So really basic, if you think about the key of C major. So C major, think about this in the form of a piano. So C major is a really popular, really common key signature for songs. And that's because if you visualize a piano and you look at the keys on the piano, C major, all of these notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then repeats over to C. All of these notes are the white keys on the keyboard. So all of the black keys, we don't even touch them really in the key of C or in a C chord or a C scale. So how does this relate to songwriting? Well, when we write songs, we create chord progressions with songs. So that might be a C chord to a G chord to a D chord to an F chord, whatever it is. But how do you know which chords you're supposed to push and what chords fit in a song? So how we do that, and we're going to stay right at the entrance to this music theory and song composition rabbit hole today. We're going to keep about as high as we possibly can. We're going to assign numeric values to the notes in a scale. So if you think about the key of C, you have C being the first note of the scale, B being the 7th note of the scale, and then D, E, F, G, A, all there in the middle. So then what we do is we take that one step further for chord progressions, and we're going to assign Roman numerals to these chords or these notes. And we're going to either capitalize them or have them in uppercase or lowercase, depending on if the chord is either a major chord or a minor chord. So a major chord is, I guess, we're talking, Emily was talking about ABBA this morning, and we got to talking about happy songs, the happiest songs in the world. Major chords are those happy sounding chords. You think of sunshine and rainbows. Minor chords, on the other hand, are some of those more like doom and gloom, the gloomy, the scary, the sad, the depressing type of sound on a chord. And when we get into GarageBand, we'll push some buttons so you can hear the difference between these. If this is the first time you've ever been introduced to this concept, you've ever heard of this major versus a minor chord. So for song composition, we're going to take those numeric values, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we're going to assign them Roman numerals. So in this case, if we think about the key of C, in those notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, the one chord, that C, is a major chord. So if I was playing the one chord in a key of C, the one chord would be a C major chord. If I was going to play an F chord, we can see that the F chord relates to, that's the 4 chord, the 4th note in the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that is also a major chord. The G chord is your 5 chord, and that one is also a major. So if I played a song in the key of C and I wanted to do a 1, 4, 5 chord progression, I would play C, F, G. The minor 6, which is another one that we commonly see in popular music, pop music, country music, rock music, is the minor 6 chord. So if we look at the 6th note in the scale is an A, we see that's a lowercase. So our lower Roman numeral 6, we know that that's a minor chord. On the bottom of page 1 of your handout today, you've got some common chord progressions that you see in popular music. One of those begins with the minor 6 chord, goes to the, the 4 chord, the 5 chord, 5 chord. So minor 6 to 5 to 1 to 4. And then you've also got some songs that you may recognize or familiar with that follow that chord progression. And when we get in again to GarageBand here in just a second, we'll demonstrate some of those songs and what they sound like, and you'll recognize that chord progression right away. The most popular, at least in popular music, country music, is the 1-5 minor 6 4 chord progression. There are tons and tons of songs that follow that. So how does this relate then to, like we're talking about the key of C. So what if you're not playing a song in the key of C? How does that work? Well, that same structure or that same pattern follows any other major key. So if we look at this chart, which is again at the bottom of page 1 on your handout, the key of C, here's all of our notes. Here's all of our chords, minor 2, minor 3, major 4, major 5, minor 6, and then this diminished 7th that we won't really touch too much on today. But you can see all of those. So if I'm not playing in the key of C, maybe I'm playing in the key of G instead, and I want to do a 1, 4, 5, 1 chord progression, I know that my 1 chord in the key of G is a G major chord. My 4 chord in the key of G is a C major chord. And my 5 chord in the key of G is a D major chord. So I knew that if I was playing those notes in a song, I would play G, C, or those chords rather, I play G, C, D, and then go back to G. If I was doing that 1 minor or a 1-5 minor 6 4 in the key of G, I would say my first chord is G major. My second chord, my minor 6, this is an E minor chord. I would then go to, I would go to the D next, then I would go to the E minor, and then I would end on my C major chord. So as you're starting to build songs in GarageBand and building your own composition, use this as a crutch as you're initially learning, to know that if I want to make a song that's going to be 4 measures long and I want to do 1, 4, 5, 1, I know in the key of G, I'm going to play the G chord, I'm going to play the C chord, the D chord, I'm going to go back to the G chord. All right. So I'm going to pause there for just a hot minute. And before we jump actually into GarageBand, and pause for any questions you have about those kind of chord progressions and how that works and how those fit together. And Chris, I see the question you had in there. We'll get that in just a second here. So let me ask you this. If I'm in the key of D, and I wanted you to tell me what the minor 6 chord in the key of D is, throw it in the chat. What would that chord be? B? And is that a major or a minor chord? And again, you can throw that in the chat if you want. B minor. Heather, thank you. Beautiful. Jessica coming in next. Awesome. So we're going to use this to build our songs, and you'd be blown away. And this actually, when I first kind of learned about this a while back, it blew my mind in how I listened to and understood contemporary pop music. And this transcends genres, contemporary pop music, rock music, country music, contemporary Christian music. It all follows, you'll see that most of these chords follow that same progression. So Chris, your question about PC users, if there is an option for PC users to do the same thing. I'm not 100% familiar, and this might be a good question for the group. If there's any other music composition programs that the group is using within like a Windows operating system. I'm sure there are. I've just never used any. I don't know if the group, again, you can just throw that in the chat if there's any PC-based programs that you used for music composition. Carol never looked, not aware of one. I'll take that as a takeaway and see if I can find something, if there's anything equivalent to that that's not, that's either free or doesn't necessarily break the bank. All right. So let's jump into the fun stuff. So if you guys are ready, we're going to go right into GarageBand here and let's have some fun. All right. So this is the first process we're going to look at, begins at the top of page 2 of your handout. So if you would go ahead and open up GarageBand on your phone or your iPad, depending on what you're using. And I'm going to make this full screen so we can see it better. Oops, what did I do? There we go. Perfect. All right. And if anybody is having problems seeing my screen, or like your chat window or your video window is covering up any of the screen that you're seeing here, you should be able to adjust that if you hover over. If you got video up, you should just be able to hover over that and minimize it or change the way that it looks. Okay. So let's dive in. All right. So if this is the first time that you've opened up GarageBand, you're probably not seeing exactly what I'm seeing right now. You may have some prompts that show up that say, hey, welcome to GarageBand. Did you know you can do these things? Just hit there should be a blue continue button or a blue button. Just tap that a couple times. And then you will likely run into, you'll get to a point where you see what looks like a piano. And that's a screenshot that you can see on the top of page 2. Once you get to that point, just go ahead and hit the back button in the upper left-hand corner, and that'll take you back here to kind of your project browser. So again, just hit continue a couple times on your screen until you see that back button in the upper left-hand corner, and just tap that. What I love about Apple projects and Apple products in general is that everybody has an iCloud account if you have an Apple ID. And GarageBand on mobile devices, iPad or iPhone, is going to save all of your projects to your iCloud account. So that means that these projects are transferable. If I start a song on my iPhone and I also have an iPad, and I go from my iPhone to my iPad and I open up GarageBand, I'm going to have access to be able to download that song that's saved in the cloud to my device and then pick right up where I left off. And another thing that's nice about this, if you're collaborating with maybe somebody else, so I've got a ton of projects that you can see on my screen here. I do a lot of GarageBand stuff for church right now because we're all virtual, is I can create a project in GarageBand and I can share it with somebody else, share the actual project so that, you know, our band director, I'll create something, lay a guitar part down. I'll share the project with our band director. She'll add a vocal track and a bass line. And then I can come back in and add a harmony to that. So we can go back and forth. And I just love the fact that you can collaborate and share so easily. But what you'll notice on the main landing here, your project selection area, you've got 2 folders at the bottom. You've got a recent folder and you've got a browse folder. So if I tap that browse folder, you can see that all the projects that you're creating are going to save to this GarageBand for iOS folder. And this is in that browse folder here on the bottom of it. If you're on an iPad, you might have a menu on the left-hand side of your screen instead of down at the bottom where I'm seeing this right here. But how you get to a project or how you start a project doesn't really matter whether you're on the browse or the recents area. If you're in the recents area, for my device, there's a little blue plus sign that we can tap to start a new project. If I'm in the browse folder here on my iPhone, I've got this create song button on the left side of the screen that I can tap to start a new song. It doesn't really matter how you do it. It's all going to get to the same spot. So let's start a project. So if you would click the plus sign from the recents folder or the plus sign create song from the browse button, either way, doesn't matter. Go ahead and hit that or tap that and we'll open it up to start a new song. Likely what you guys are seeing right now, and you may see something a little different, that's okay, is the keyboard. So GarageBand operates on tracks. GarageBand is a multi-track editing program. So if you're familiar with like a non-linear video editing program like Camtasia or Premiere Pro or After Effects, you can create and record multiple tracks, layer them on top of each other, move them around, fade them in and out. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff you can do, which makes it a really versatile tool. But the great thing also about GarageBand is that there are all these stock instruments built into it like your keyboard sound. I'm going to swipe over, see some of these. We've got a drum sounds or drum tracks that we can add. You can plug a live instrument into your phone to simulate an amp. You can record audio, vocals directly in a computer. We've got string tracks. We've got bass tracks. We've got guitar tracks. We've got world instrument tracks. I mean, all sorts of different options in here that allow you to build really diverse and custom sounds just by a few taps, which is what I love. And with each of these options, you'll see something like here on the bottom right, I've got this more sounds, looks like a circle with an ellipsis in it. I can tap that more sounds and I can see all of these additional sounds. This is on just the keyboard track right now, but you could do it with the guitar, the bass, you name it. And you can see all of these different keyboard sounds that exist: a heavy metal organ, a smooth clavicle, a soul organ, a Wurlitzer. On the left side, I've got all of these synth options with synth classic, synth bass, lead, pads. I mean, the options are just endless in here, which is just fantastic to really customize what you hear. And there's also, you can see at the top here, I've got an option. I can download additional free keyboard packs if I want additional keyboard sound options. And again, that same thing, I'm going to tap the done button in the upper right, is basically universal across a lot of these smart instruments. When the other night I was dancing with my daughter after dinner, we were watching YouTube videos down in the basement, and I came across a 12-minute long video where a guy recreated the instrumental track to Michael Jackson's Thriller in GarageBand. And I sat there transfixed watching this guy do this on the screen. And I got a little bored. So I fast forward to the very end to see what the finished product sounded like. And it was almost identical to what you hear in the studio version of that song. So really, the opportunities are endless in here for, how deep you want to go or how diverse you want to get. So we're going to select a track to get us started. And we're going to do the keyboard track just to kind of get going. And there's two ways that we can get into, we're going to use the Smart Piano. You can either tap the keyboard track right there, where the keyboard word is, or you can tap Smart Piano down at the bottom. Either way, it's going to open up that smart instrument for us. So let's create a keyboard track, and I'll tap that to open it up. And if you guys see this right now, if you tap the smart instrument, that's likely what you're seeing. If you tapped just the keyboard button, you may see an actual keyboard. If you're on the keyboard, we're going to focus mainly on the smart instrument portion of it. So if you're on the keyboard, if that's what you see right now, just tap it. Looks like a vertical rectangle or vertical rounded rectangle with a couple segments in it that are colored in. Just tap that button. It's right above on the right side of the keyboard here, right next to the dots. So we get back to our main interface. So why we spent so much time up front talking about chord progressions is we did that because of what we're looking at right now. So if you're looking at these chord paddles, essentially what I call them, we are in the key of C by default is what GarageBand starts a project at. And if you look at that major chord progression chart on page 1 of your handout, and you look at the chord options that are presented to you right here on this screen, they're identical. Your 1 chord, your 4 chord, your 5 chord, your minor 2, your minor 3, your minor 6 chord, your diminished chord, they're all here. So that gives us the opportunity. We don't really have to make any changes to what chords show up here. We can play a song. If I wanted to play Stir It Up by Bob Marley, knowing that goes from the 1 chord to the 4 chord to the 5 chord, I know I'm going to play C, F, and G. Stir it up, little darling, stir it up. There it is. And I can just tap those chords to play a song. With the piano, although every interface looks a little bit different, depending on the instrument that you're playing, you'll notice with the piano, we've got these dark gray 3 rectangles at the bottom. Those are essentially like the individual notes that make up a C chord or an F chord. And then the lighter, looks like a white or a really light gray segments. If you envision a piano with the low notes being on the left and the high notes being on the right, if I tap these, you can hear it's kind of working up, like simulating that it's working up the piano. So the very top bar is the highest C chord on the piano, or a higher C chord on the piano. And then the lower one, or on the bottom one, is lower down on the piano. If we were playing a guitar, the guitar has essentially only one shape to simulate the chords. So we don't have as much diverse options, but with the piano, we do have all those, which is really cool. We're going to have to actually record something in this song. When we did loops last month, for anybody that was there, we literally just went and found a loop and drug it onto our timeline and then hit play. We didn't have to record any sounds. With these smart instruments, we actually do have to record something. So let's take a minute to kind of explore what we see in our menu bar or our control bar across the top of the screen. So this is on, if you look at your handout, I believe we're looking at the top of page 3, or page 3 rather, the screenshot that you'll see on there. We'll talk a little bit about it, give you a reminder of what some of these things mean. So let's start from the top left and we'll work over to the right, and then we'll come in and we'll actually start recording some stuff. So the very first one that we see is this downward facing arrow in the upper left-hand corner. So again, we're looking at page 3 of the handout. If we tap that, GarageBand will save your work periodically as you go, but if you want to exit the song, save it and exit, you can tap this downward facing arrow and tap My Songs. When we looked at just a second ago on the piano selection track, there were all sorts of different piano sounds that we had access to. We can also access those sounds again. Right now, we've got the grand piano setting by tapping that downward facing arrow. And if you're on an iPad, it might be in the middle of the screen. You might see the word grand piano, which you can tap and then access these sounds this way. But if I tap that downward facing arrow and tap grand piano, it pulls up that keyboard sound selection. So I don't want a grand piano, but I want a classic rock organ. I can tap that classic rock organ. The interface looks the same, but when I tap these chords, you can kind of hear that it sounds more organy. Or maybe I want a soul organ. Sounds similar to the rock, but I've got that option there. So you can always access additional sounds just by tapping that downward facing arrow in the upper left-hand corner and then going down and tapping whatever sound you're on. So you can choose whatever one you want. It doesn't really matter for this one. I'm just going to stick back to the grand piano. And that was from the downward facing arrow in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Right next to that, you've got what looks like 3 squares that are aligned, 1 big square, 2 little squares. That will allow you to switch the type of track that you're recording. So right now we've got a piano selected. If I tap that square or those 3 squares, it takes me back to my track selection, which I can scroll through or swipe through rather, and choose a different track if I wanted to. But I'm going to stick with the piano. Right next to that, some of you may see this, some of you may not. It looks like a brick wall icon, number 3 on the top of page 3 of your handout there. This is how we can get out of the smart instrument and get back to the track view to be able to, edit the clips that we're recording. If you don't see this right now, it will generally show up after you have recorded something. So we haven't recorded anything yet. I have it on mine, but you might not see it on yours because we haven't recorded anything. Once we do record something, you should see that track pop up, and we'll look at that here in a second. We're going to skip over these 3 vertical lines with the little circles on them. This is your track effects. I'll tap it just so you can kind of see, or if you want to tap it and see that too. The track effects allow you to manipulate things like your volume, the EQ, the treble and the bass of how bright or low you want your sound to be. All the way at the bottom, you've got these master effects, so you can mess with the echo of the track, the reverb of the track, and all of that is from these track controls, which are these 3 vertical arrows with the circles on them on the top of your control bar. So I'm going to tap that to close it back down again. Next, across the top, we've got our left-facing arrow with the vertical bar. That's going to be our return to beginning. So it's going to return the playhead to the very beginning of the song. We've got our play button. We've got our record button, the red circle. And then we've got our metronome. So when you're recording smart instruments, it's going to be, I think it's really important to have the metronome on. And the metronome is going to help you keep time. So if I know that, I'm going to do one measure or two measures of a C chord, I can have that metronome on so I can keep track of exactly, where those changes would happen. And with the metronome turned on right now, it's blue. If I hit the play button, we're going to hear that metronome sound. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, so on and so forth. So the metronome is going to be really handy, really going to be key initially, at least when we start to record these instrument sounds. Next to that, on the top of your screen, you'll see what looks like an amp dial or a dial. Let's go ahead and tap that, because this is going to be our best friend when we're recording smart instrument tracks. And that is the autoplay feature within GarageBand. So you have the opportunity or the option within here to just tap these chord paddles and play chords. And I could record that if I want to. But if I'm not very good rhythmically, or I want something that sounds a little different than just chunky chords going back and forth, I can turn on this autoplay function, which I've got 4 different presets or 4 different settings on here to let GarageBand play something for me. So for example, if I go, I'll turn this dial to the 1. And what you'll notice when that happens, I've got my paddles down here at the bottom of the screen look like they're sectioned out. But when I turn on the autoplay function, the interface changes. So I've got 2 things that I can tap. I can tap either the very top, which activates both of the 2 sections here, or rather all sections within that. Or I can tap just one of these, like underneath the C. And the difference between those is if you tap the top of it, it's going to give you the bottom end of that sound. So we'll hear what that sounds like. So you can hear the very dun, dun. You can hear that low end coming through there. So when we're recording songs, we can choose an autoplay setting. So I'll do 2 or 3. That sounds pretty. I like that. I'll probably end up using that when we go to record. But depending on the sound that you've selected, so right now I've got the grand piano. If I go in and change, tapping the little downward arrow on the upper left side of the screen, change from grand piano to say heavy metal organ. I'm not a huge fan of that sound, but basically you hear that the pattern changes based on the instrument that we've got selected. So tons of diversity. And I think probably one of the more difficult things with GarageBand in general is just, number 1, knowing what's out there. And number 2, like playing around to figure out what fits the sound that you're looking for. So those are your autoplay functions. And we can, again, change those just by, tapping on the dial on the number that you want to use as your autoplay. And you access those on the top of the screen, your top control bar, the little dial looking button that right now is blue. I'll tap it again and we get back to our interface. Julie, any questions we're getting in the chat we need to talk about?
I'm on mute. I do. No, I don't see any. Okay.
Keep chugging along. The next thing that you've got on the upper right-hand corner is your little cogwheel or your gear icon. I always recommend, before you start doing anything with building songs in GarageBand, is to tap that settings icon and set up your song's tempo, the key signature, the time signature. So the tempo being basically how many beats per minute, how fast or slow is your song. The default that GarageBand gives us is 110 beats per minute. The time signature, the default is 4/4 time. So 4/4 time means that there are 4 beats in a measure and the quarter note gets the beat. So if you think about a song that's just like, a rock song that just drives 1, 2, 3, 4, do, 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 do. That's your 4/4 time. You can tap that time signature and change it to either 3/4 time or 6/8 time. 3/4 time is like waltz time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, da, da, da. I think of the Christmas song, Frosted winter, that's in 3/4 time. And then the last one is 6/8 time. So that means that there's 8 beats in a measure, or there's 6 beats in a measure, and the 8th note gets the beat. So what that sounds like, famous songs that are in 6/8 time, the Righteous Brothers, Unchained Melody. Oh, my love, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, my darling. So that's one. And then the other really famous one that I like to think about is Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. I heard there was a secret chord, 4, 5, 6. David playing it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can kind of hear what that sounds like. We're going to keep it in 4/4 time, just because it's pretty common and we really don't need to mess with it. But the next thing, and this is what we talked about earlier, is the key signature. So right now it defaults to C major. Really cool thing about GarageBand is the interface is going to give you whatever chords fit your key signature that you've selected. So if we decide we don't want to be in the key of C, we want something to be in the key of F, for instance, I can tap that key signature and I can tap F. And what you'll notice when I do that is my chords all change relative to the key. So now instead of C being right here in the middle, I've got F right here in the middle. There you go. Yeah.
Quick question here from Heather. If I tap the dial again to return to the interface, it saves my selection, question mark.
Yes. So yes, are you talking about the dial up here at the top, the autoplay dial? Or are we talking about the settings? And Heather, feel free to jump off mute if it would be easier to clarify that way.
She said yes. I'm good.
Okay, perfect. The other thing from the settings that's really cool, and this is a recent update if you've got the most updated version of GarageBand, is if you notice at the top of the screen, we've got our ruler. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The default view with this ruler is in measures. So right now we've got an 8 section or an 8 measure section of our song. But if you wanted to say, I only want a 30-second song, you would have no way of knowing how much time 8 measures at 110 beats per minute was. With this most recent update, if you go into your song settings, you've got this time ruler dial or this time ruler switch. And if I tap that to turn it on, it changes the ruler from measures to time. So here I can see that 8 measures at 110 beats per minute, which is what our project is set up at, is a little over 15 seconds long. And that's a really handy way to be able to tell, like if you're making a video, or like projects that I've historically used GarageBand for are like, I need a track to go along with a video, or I need a track to like introduce an e-learning course or play in the background of an e-learning course. But it only needs to be like 30 seconds long. You could come in here, you could build your song and then come in here and look at it and say, okay, it's 30 seconds. That's perfect. That's exactly what I need. Or, oh, it's only 15 seconds. I need to make my song a little bit longer. And that's from the time ruler. But when I'm working, I would highly recommend that instead of using the time ruler as you're building out these songs, to turn that time ruler off and just use the measures. Because if you're building a song in sections, so you're going to do like a chord progression that's 4 measures long, you want to be able to see that right there on your ruler. So those are all manipulated from the settings wheel in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. The next thing we've got on the very right side of our ruler is this little white plus sign. If we tap that little white plus sign, this is where we can add sections to our song or set the length of our sections. There's a lot of different ways you can set up a song in GarageBand. I typically only use one section and I just tap that section. So right now I see section A. I just tap that and I change the number of measures in that section, which is showing is 8 right now. I'll just increase it to whatever I need to fit the length of my song. You can build multiple song sections within a song. So if you think about like a traditional song has a verse, it has a chorus, it has a bridge. You could create an A section, a B section, and a C section to fit all of those things, as opposed to one song section that just includes all of those. It's up to you how you set it up. I mean, if you're going really crazy in here and you're building complex songs, then by all means, you might use multiple song sections. For what we're doing today, we're just going to leave it as one section, but instead of being 8 bars, let's increase it to 16. So we'll make it twice as long. Oops. So to do that, we just tap section A. So this is the white plus sign on the right-hand corner. Tap that section A. We'll increase it to 16 measures. And then we'll either hit back or close out of that menu. And you'll notice that our ruler has now updated. It was 8, now it's 16. The last thing that we'll look at here on our Smart Piano interface is this vertical, or these 3 vertical bars. Right now mine's red, and I think it's because I have my autoplay turned on. And actually it doesn't matter. It's been red anyway, so it's a rounded rectangle, vertical rounded rectangle. If I tap that, it actually allows me to switch the view that I'm looking at. So if I wanted to play notes on the piano, I can tap that button and move from chords to individual notes. And I'll give you an example. There was a project that I was working on that was like a game-based learning course, and I needed a sound to like that when the learner unlocked an achievement. And I had the picture in my brain of like trumpets, burr, burr, burr. And I looked all over the internet, freesound.org, couldn't find anything that I really liked or that I felt like sounded clean or good enough for what I wanted. And then I thought, well, maybe I can go into GarageBand and maybe there's like a trumpet sound that I can use. And sure enough, I tapped the downward arrow up here to get to the sound selector, and there is this other category down here, and there's a brass ensemble is one of the options. So you have all these string and woodwind instruments, but I tap this brass ensemble. Interface looks the same, but you can hear it sounds like a brass ensemble. So I just started poking around until I found those notes. And I recorded just that small sound, exported it, and there I had my achievement. So anytime the learner unlocked an achievement, that song played or that sound played. Nice and easy. So that is, I'm going to go back to my original keyboard sound. We did the grand piano. So that is from, again, this vertical bar. The other thing that you'll see on here as well is when we go to this piano or the individual keys view, you've got a couple other options. So next to the rounded rectangle, you've got these, looks like a pyramid of squares. If you tap that changes the arpeggiator. So what that means is if I like tap a note on this key and I slide, you can hear that it's playing all of those keys individually. Now, if I tap the arpeggiator, it gives you the option to kind of mess around with some things. And when I tap these notes, pressing and holding, it's giving me, it's given that I think it's an octave. So that's called the arpeggiator. And that's from those, I'm going to turn that off because I don't really like it. Those pyramid squares. The last thing on here, before we get into actually recording some stuff, is what looks like these notes, these 2 quarter notes. If I tap that, this is another cool thing about not really needing any type of music knowledge to like play a solo on a piano to your track, is you can tap these 2 quarter notes and allows you to select a scale for whatever instrument you're on. So if I wanted to play only the notes that are in, I don't know, let's just randomly choose this major pentatonic scale. If I tap that, now my interface changes from individual keys, like you were looking at a regular piano, to these paddles that are the notes that fit that major pentatonic scale. And if I'm playing a solo over whatever chord progression I've created, again, in the key of C, those notes are all going to fit in there. Anyway, so you can kind of tap around, and that's only available when you're in that individual keys view by tapping that quarter note or those 2 quarter notes, but I'm going to turn that off. All right. So this, again, specifically speaking, is all about, this is the Smart Piano, and we'll record something and we'll pull up a different track, but really the interface and the functionality is really similar across all of these other instruments: guitar, bass, strings, drums, you name it. So let's go back. If you've got the individual piano view up right now. Let's go back to the chords. So we'll tap that rounded rectangle, that vertical rounded rectangle, and let's turn autoplay on. I would ask if you're not muted currently, which I think everybody is, go ahead and mute yourself, because if you're going to start pressing buttons, we don't want a cacophony of sound flying through all of our speakers. But we're going to actually record something. And we're going to keep it really simple just for this demonstration today. We're just going to use 2 chords basically. So I'm going to turn on the autoplay. So I'll tap the little dial in the top corner, top right side of the screen. And I'm going to turn on, I'll do number 4, autoplay number 4. So we're going to hit the record button and it's going to essentially count us in. And I think that's the default. So it's going to give us 4 beats before it actually starts recording. So I'll tap that so you can see what that sounds like. And we've got our metronome on. So now you can see my timeline bar. My playhead is moving and it's red. So it knows that we're recording something. In this case, nothing, because we're not doing anything. But the reason that it's nice to have that count in, and if your count in is not turned on, so if you hit the record button and it doesn't give you those 4 clicks or those 4 beats to count you in, you can go to your settings menu in the upper right-hand corner and you can use this metronome and count in. You can tap that and you can toggle those on and off. So with these smart instruments, I love that count in feature, because we want the music, or we want the chords to start playing right when the recording starts. So right on the downbeat of whatever measure we're in. So if we tap the record button, we can immediately tap the record button, we can immediately tap a chord and it will start playing right when GarageBand starts recording. So what that sounds like, I'm going to hit the record button and I'm going to immediately tap the C chord. And here's what happens. So you can see that it came in right away, right on the downbeat of the measure with the record as soon as I hit record. So what I'm going to record in this case, and again, you do whatever suits your fancy this morning, but I'm going to record 2 measures of C and 2 measures of G. So I'm going to count it off as I'm going, but I'll tap the C chord to start. And then after 2 measures, I'm going to tap the G chord right away so that it changes. And then I'm going to end up looping that basically 4 measure pattern over the rest of the song. So how do we do that? Here we go. So I'm going to hit record and I'm going to tap C and I'll count this off as I'm going. Here we go. C 2 3 4 2 2 3 4 G 2 3 4 4 2 3 4 stop. All right. Actually, let's make it a little longer. Let's do 2C, 2G, 2A minor, and 2F. So let's do that 1 5 minor 6 4 chord progression that's so popular across the board. And again, I will count this off as I'm going. So here we go. Record. Start with C. C 2 3 4 2 2 3 4 G 2 3 4 3 2 3 4 A minor 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 F 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 stop. All right, and I'll play that back. So we're going to end up looping that. And it didn't really hit that A minor change very well, but that's okay. We don't need to fix it for now. So I've got that recorded. So now, again, what I want to do, and this is a technique I use a lot on my songs that I'm building for training, is that they don't need to be that complex. They just need to be something that's audibly appeasing to the ears, that will just be in the background and not necessarily the main focus, but it supplements whatever I've got in my e-learning courses. So with that recorded, I'm going to go back to my timeline. So I'm going to tap this brick wall icon on the top of the screen to get back to my track view. And here I can see what I recorded. I can see my grand piano track. And right now it's about 9 measures long, but you notice that the music stops right at the start of measure 9. So I've got 8 measures. So if I want to adjust this and loop this 8 measure piano track, we can adjust the tracks. And this, if you're looking at your GarageBand handout, is on page 4, talks a little bit about how we can do this. So right now my track is green. I can tap that track or that clip to select it. So I'm tapping on the actual, like the dashes that are in the grand piano sounds that we made. Tap that once, tap it again and we can see we get a sub menu of different options. So I can copy this clip, I can paste it again later on in the timeline. I can move my playhead to a certain spot, and I can split the track in half and then move a piece of it somewhere. But really what I want to do is I just want to take 8 measures of this grand piano sound and then loop it so that it goes its first 8 measures, and then it just starts back over again. So how I can do that is I can tap on my sound, and you notice I've got these handles that appear on the left side and the right side of the screen. I can tap and hold on the handle on the right side that stops after measure 9, and I'm just going to drag it backwards. So notice I'm dragging it forwards now. I'm going to drag it backwards, and I'm going to line it right at the top or right when measure 9 starts. So now I've got a perfect 8 measure piano part that I've recorded. So if I wanted to loop this or just repeat it, that same pattern again, I could do it 2 ways. I could copy it. So just double tap on my clip, choose copy, align my playhead on the timeline to where I want to paste it, and then just double tap in the black area and paste it. So now if I play just those last parts, and it starts right back over again. So that's one way that I can do it. I'm going to delete that, double tap and delete it. The other way I can do it, if I want it to fill up, right now we've only got 16 measures, but if I had like 32 measures or whatever, and I wanted that just to repeat the whole time, I can use the loop functionality. So if I double tap on my clip, I get my cut, copy, paste, delete. I have my loop button. And if I tap that loop, notice that it just repeats what I did for those 8 measures. You can see it looks like a little dip there right at the start of measure 9. It's going to repeat that pattern for me. So now if I play it again close to the end, I'll just move my playhead forward. Here's where it ended, and it started right back over again. So now I've got 16 measures of that 1-4 or 1-5 minor 6-4 chord progression. Let's do one more. We've got about 13 or so minutes left. Let's add one more track in here, because really the fundamentals of what we're doing right now apply to all of these smart instruments. So you can just go do exactly what we're doing here with the piano and do it on another instrument. So let's do that real fast. From my tracks view, I'm going to tap the plus sign in the bottom left-hand corner, and I'm going to add a new track. Instead of doing the keyboard, this time I'm going to go find the strings, because I think strings sound really cool. So I'm going to select the smart strings. And notice my interface, although it looks a little bit different, all of the options that we saw on the smart piano are there. But if I tap these chords, I've got strings instead of piano. The other thing I love about these strings is that you can mirror what a violinist or somebody that has a bow that's playing, what that sounds like, because they kind of scrape it across the strings and then drag it back, and it gives that really cool kind of flowy type of sound. I can tap and hold on these paddles, and simulate that sound, which I think is just so cool. But we want to autoplay again, just like we did with the piano. So with the smart strings up, I'm going to tap the dial in the upper right-hand corner to access the autoplay. And what you'll notice here is that I can isolate certain instruments. So I've got 2 violins, a viola, a cello, and a bass is what makes up these chords or these sounds for the strings. But if I don't like the low end, I want to get rid of the cellos and basses, I can keep those 2, the violas and violins, or I can turn them all back on and hear it all. But I'm going to do the exact same thing I did the first time. I'm going to record that 8-bar or that 8-measure progression, C, G, A minor, F, with the violins on autoplay. And I'll just randomly select 3. And we'll go with number 3. All right. So I've got my playhead all the way at the beginning of my timeline. I'll hit record, tap the C chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, A minor, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, F, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, stop. And I'm going to jump back to my timeline by tapping the brick wall in the upper left-hand corner. And now I can see my cinematic strings, which I could change just like the grand piano. We could change the sound of that. I'm going to back this off so that I make it 8 measures. I'll tap that handle, tap it again, and I'll loop it. So now what I've got, so you can kind of hear the piano in there. You can obviously hear the strings. If I wanted to manipulate that, like my strings are too loud, I want to turn them down a little bit to make my piano come out a little bit more. You'll notice on the left-hand side of my tracks view right now, I've got the piano icon, I've got the strings icon, and then I've got this little light gray vertical bar. So this menu on the left side of the screen, I can tap and drag to fly that out, or tap and drag to fly it back in. And here I've got access to the track volume. So if I want to change the cinematic strings, I want to make them a little quieter, I can just slide that bar back. And that's a little bit more balanced. So you can hear the strings and the piano at the exact same time. So as you're building songs, literally it is just this process with as many sounds, as many instruments, that you want to choose and what you want to use. All right. But the last thing that we need to do is we got to get it out of GarageBand. So how do we get this out of GarageBand and into another project or into an email or something? So typically what I'll do is I'll just email this track to myself on my work email address, because it'll just export like an .m4a, I think is what the file format is, to my email, and then I can just save it on my work computer and use it. So what we're going to do is we're going to export this song. The downward arrow on the upper left-hand corner of the screen, we're going to tap that, and we're going to tap My Songs to get back out to the project folder. So it saved our song, brought us back out to the beginning. And this process, if you're looking at your participant guide, is listed on the bottom of, or I'm sorry, on page 6. Talks about the process of exporting the song. So from my project folder, all of my different GarageBand projects I've got, I'm going to tap and hold on the song that I want to export, and it's going to pull up a menu. I can rename my song from here. Right now it's the My Song 3, I think. I can give it a new name if I wanted to. But if I want to send it, email it, put it somewhere, I'm going to choose the share option. And it's going to give you 3 different options. You can either share the song, so it'll export the song in an M4A or an MP3 file. You can make it a ringtone, or you can share the entire project. So when I mentioned earlier at the very beginning that I'll use GarageBand to collaborate back and forth with people, I can share the project that way. But in this case, we're just going to export the song itself. So we'll tap Song, and now it gives us the ability to select the quality of the song. I'm not sure what the default is, if for anybody that's following along with this, what the default quality is, but I typically use this highest quality iTunes Plus. It sounds good. It doesn't lose a lot of sound quality. It's not a significantly large file size. It works for what I need. But you could choose, an uncompressed or a lossless for a little bit better quality audio track. Again, it's completely up to you. If you scroll down, you'll see you can change the metadata associated with it. You can add a cover image to your song, change the artist, composer, or whatever. But once you've got those selected, you'll just tap Share in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, and then you can choose how do you want to save it. Do you want to email it, put it in your OneDrive, however you want to do it. If I choose Gmail to email this to myself, it'll just export the song, open up the Gmail interface, and then I can email it right off. Nice and easy. So there you go. So exporting song, super, super simple. The hardest part is just knowing, exactly what you want to put in there. So I'm going to pause, turn my video back on here for a minute. We've got about 6 minutes or so left. What questions do you guys have, or what features? Is there anything else? And you can either unmute yourself or throw these in the chat that you'd like to see in relation to these smart instruments.
Hi, this is Heather. Is there a website or somewhere that tells like chord progressions of popular songs?
Yes, there are a ton of them. Google popular chord progressions.
Perfect.
And it will present you all sorts of different, like that screenshot, that chord progression screenshot that's on page 1 of that handout. Google search. Wikipedia has, so I gave you some songs on page 1 of that, of the handout, some popular songs that follow those chord progressions. Wikipedia has an entire Wikipedia page filled with popular songs that use the 1, 5, minor 6, and 4 chord. So there's all sorts of different combinations, and you can change. I mean, when we looked at that smart piano interface, it was just the default chords. You could change those if you wanted to make them slightly different. If you wanted to do a different type of progression, more of a jazzy type of progression with a lot of major 7 chords or minor 7 chords, or that sort of stuff, you can change all that. But yeah, simple Google search would be popular chord progressions or chord progressions, and you'll find more than you could ever desire to see with ways that you can build those chords.
Perfect. Thank you.
What else? Anything else you'd like to see demonstrated, or questions you have about building songs?
Adam, I would just mention that Chris did leave a message that she ended up dropping off because she was not able to download this on her break computer. So she's going to also check to see if there are options for PC users to do.
Okay. Yep. And I've got that on my list. I'll double check, make sure that we get something, and I can follow up there as well.
Great.
One thing that I did not mention that is in your participant guide is page 4. Is this what page it is? No, page 5 talks about the loop browser. So last month we covered using loops in GarageBand. So loops are just small patterns of sounds that repeat over and over and over again. And GarageBand has this huge library of loops that you can just go find. So maybe I want a drum track or a piano progression or something like that. Instead of building your own, you could just go grab one of those loops and you just drag them into your project, and you can build songs that way too. That's what we talked about last month in our Tech SIG meeting, which I didn't necessarily cover. It's pretty easy. And I typically will use, I'll give you an example of a game I built that was set on a farm, and I wanted a bluegrassy sounding type of song. So I went in and used the Smart Instrument guitar and found a bluegrass picking pattern. And I used 2 chords, G and C. Is basically what it sounded like. And then I went in and grabbed a brush, if a brush drum sound, I don't know, bluegrass country songs have that brush sounding drum snare. Found that loop and just dragged that underneath my, and I had a song. I mean, that was all I need, 30 seconds, 15 seconds of that sound. And I had it, recording it on my own and then grabbing a loop. So there's all sorts of different possibilities, for how to do this. And the best advice I can give you is just explore. I mean, just go do it. Just go poke around and see what's out there. The very bottom of your participant guide as well has a link to the GarageBand support website. If you Google Apple GarageBand help, there's resources upon resources of intricate explanations and details about how to use all the different features and functionalities within GarageBand. So definitely lean on that too. But if you have any questions, by all means, always reach out to me, arich@athene.com. You can connect with me through ATD, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And I would love if you do build something, let me know, send it to me, share it with this group. I'll follow up with this group, at the end here, after we're all done, to make sure that we've got everybody accounted for. So with that, I guess I will just leave it out to the group. Go make some music, go have some fun. Any final thoughts, questions, comments, concerns before we break for the day?
This was very helpful. Thank you so much for giving us a demo and showing us some helpful tricks. This was awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Have a good Friday.
All right. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again for coming, and we'll see you hopefully again next month for some PowerPoint discussion.